Started. So welcome to EnerGIS2017 and welcome to Range Resources' beautiful corporate office in South Point. My name is Harold Lee. I'm a senior analyst at Williams, and this year I have the honor of serving alongside Mark and Bruner as his co-chair and represent the planning committee to lead us off on this 5th annual gathering. Before we begin, we would like to take a moment to go over some safety and housekeeping notes. In case of fire and other emergencies, we are to evacuate the building and assemble in the southwest corner of the parking lot. There's a picture there, so that'll be that direction. And secondly, smoking is only permitted in or near the smoker's hut located to your left as you exit the patio. And finally, please alert any conference committee member or range staff if you're experiencing any health issues, as we have EMTs on site that can assist you. So, looking at the audience today, I recognize a lot of familiar faces. And for those who are here for the first time, would you mind please raise your hand? Wow. So this is our 5th annual gathering, like I said, and you know, every year the committee is surprised by the number of new participants. And so for those who don't know, EnerGIS, while it obviously stands for EnerGIS, I hope it's obvious, is actually an acronym for Energy Northeast Regional GIS. And the goal of this conference is to create a forum for geospatial professionals to meet and discuss GIS-related issues within the energy industry. We saw value in having something local, something specifically for the Northeast region of the US, outside of the traditional hub that is Houston, Oklahoma, Louisiana. And now because of where we're located, you know, on top of this great Marcellus and Utica shale gas reserve, a lot of people have mistaken us as an oil and gas only conference. But I want to assure you that the goal of EnerGIS is to be all-inclusive on anything energy. And that includes coal, electric utility, and alternative energy such as wind and solar. And another thing that sets us apart is that we are software platform neutral. There's no denying that a lot of people in the GIS world uses Esri, and that's okay. But innovative solutions come in all shapes and forms. So if you have a challenge that you overcame using other GIS platform, please don't be shy. This conference is for you. To put together an event like this together, I didn't achieve this all by myself. So I would like to take a moment to introduce the committee members. So committee, please stand as your name is called. Brienne Constable from Rice Energy. David Price from Michael Baker, Mike Mirabelli from Cabot, and Chris Donato from EQT, whom can't be with us today, and finally, Mark and Bruner, our co-founder and my co-chair. So I want to personally thank Mark for his support this year, for taking care of all the odds and ends that I missed, so thank you, Mark. So everyone, if you don't mind, please join me for a round of applause for the committee. These folks have contributed their spare time without compensation and personal agenda other than to fulfill a simple desire to help championing GIS within this industry. So thank you all. The next part is equally as important. On behalf of the committee, I would like to extend my sincere thanks to this year's sponsor. Without your financial support, we would not be able to have put together this event together, at least not for such an affordable price of $75. That can include food and social hour for a day and a half. Your support allowed us to be more attainable to a broader audience, especially during this economic downtime that we're facing in this industry. I mean, at $75, you might be able to get by without alarming the folks in accounting. So for that, I want to start by thanking Range Resources for their wonderful hospitality. And next, I would like to thank Michael Baker International. They're a silver sponsor this year, and they are a true fan of EnerGIS. And next up, I would like to thank the Larson Design Group and Gateway Engineers for sponsoring the delicious breakfast we just had. Earthsoft and Spatial Analytics for the vendor showcase. Latitude Geographics, CoreLogic, and Cabot for the coffee breaks. EMAP for the lanyard, Current East, and Keystone Consultants for the scholarships. And of course, Digital Globe for their generous sponsor in the social hour, vendor showcase, and for teaming up with Carto Vista to support the one thing that everybody really cares about, the door prizes. Next up, we have some volunteers that we would like to thank as well. Cindy Krebs from Range and Claudia Carey from Range as well, helping with the reception. Lori Brunner, Mark's wife from Jita, helping us with the social media. So hopefully you guys got some promotion emails from her. And of course, Linda Lindsay, our photographer here from Range. So thank you again, Linda, for helping out. And of course, overall, the Range IT. Now, last but not least, we would like to extend a formal thanks to Range Resources for their continued support of EnerGIS and the GIS community. By allowing us to use the office and space, Range makes it physically possible for us to have this conference year after year. And for that, the EnerGIS Committee have made a $500 donation on behalf of Range to the Greater Washington County Food Bank. Will Mr. John France, Vice President of Engineering Technology, please join us on the podium and perhaps share a few words with us? Brianna, please.
Thank you very much. Good job. Thank you. Morning, everyone. How's everybody doing? A little rainy day today. So I'd like to find out a little bit about the crowd, where everybody came from. So who thinks they came from the longest distance away? Okay, where were you?
Fort Worth.
Fort Worth, all right.
I came from Austin.
Austin, okay, it's close.
Ottawa, Canada.
Ottawa, Canada, okay.
South Korea.
South Korea. Who can top that? I have no idea where in the world that was. Where do we have to go to beat South Korea? China? Anyway, so welcome everyone. My name is Joe Ferrance, and I'm the VP of Engineering Technology here, and it's my pleasure to welcome you to this day-and-a-half conference. I think this is an exciting agenda. I believe this is the fifth conference that has been held underneath the guidelines of GITA, the Geospatial Information and Technology Association. So again, I would like to just thank the committee members for their hard work in putting this together. We always thank the sponsors. Without the sponsors, we would have a hard time feeding everybody, and the $75 is a steal for a conference like this. I attend a lot of Society of Petroleum Engineering meetings, and they're expensive. We get to go to a lot of other conferences that are very expensive, so $75 is a tremendous value, I guess. The program agenda is pretty packed, as you know. There's a lot of relevant and interesting topics as I was scrolling through it this weekend and looking at it. We're also honored to have two keynote speakers, so we thank them for their time and the information that they're going to share with us. So I guess there's cross-training opportunities here. You know, for those looking just to focus on maybe your own skill sets in one of the industries, please look at this as an opportunity to learn something maybe about another industry. A particular, I guess, interest to me through the years has been the advance of the drone technologies and how prevalent that's becoming in our societies and around the world in our industries. You know, you hear all the things about drones carrying packages, or even nowadays with the potential of a flying car at one point. So technology continues to leapfrog, and our ability to understand the GIS world is so critical in all that. I can't emphasize enough how important your skills are to your industries. we couldn't run our businesses day in and day out with what you folks bring to the table. And I just want to call you out and let you know that. And speaking for our oil and gas sector, I know our GIS staff, they're some of the most respected and valued members of our teams. And I'm continually amazed by the products that they turn out, the technology they use, and how they work with all the various groups we have. And I'm sure it's the same way in all of the industries that are here. So I'd like to go back to the conference and maybe set the stage at a higher level and say, well, who's here? So the different type of occupations that we have are surveyors, CAD technicians, environmental consultants, GIS technicians, photogrammetrists, sorry if I butchered that, UAV and drone operators, lease mapping and title research analysts, and geologic technicians. And I'm sure there's more in there, but a pretty large cross-section of various industries and different jobs within the GIS umbrella. So the industries, we've heard there's a good cross-section of the industries here. We have oil and gas sector, coal mining, midstream, natural gas transmission, electric utilities, renewable technologies, academia, environmental and civil engineering, municipal planning, and aerial photography and satellite data acquisition. So you have a chance to network and cross-pollinate between industries and the types of job you do, so take advantage of that. That's a great, great opportunity. Are there any reporters here today? I always like to ask that question because as an officer of the company, it's like, okay, everything we do anymore is recorded. And but do we have any reporters here? We'd like to welcome them if we do. No? How about academia? All right, welcome. A few folks. So Mark had asked me to spend a little bit of time, and it won't be too long, talking about some trends in our industry. As we all know, we've had this tremendous downturn that happened in 2015 and 16, pretty much around the world, as oil prices crashed. The Northeast flooded the gas market, so natural gas prices were very down, and the value that we obtained when we sold our gas up in the Northeast was very low due to too many loaves of bread being baked in an area that could only consume so many loaves of bread. So in my job, I'm very fortunate to travel around the United States and even around the world. And I help our investment relations group where I look at a lot of operator trends in their quarterly statements and what new technologies are they rolling out. In the Marcellus Shale Coalition, I lead the Drilling Completion Production Facilities Committee. So we always have our antennas out looking internal in this basin as well as other basins. And in the Society of Petroleum Engineers, I'm the Eastern Regional Director. So I've got 14 sections, so I get to travel a lot over there. And with the conferences that I go to, I pretty much have my ear to the ground. So you listen for commonalities and where are the growth areas and what has happened. And so I wanted to put some of this in perspective. But I think we know that the industry overall has become much more cost effective. And there's a few drivers that have done that in both oil and gas plays. So what were the big drivers, I guess? I think first, and you saw in 15, as the industry shrunk, as oil prices decreased, all of a sudden we had a lot less rigs working. We had a lot less frac fleets working. So the service sector cost came down dramatically in 15 and even 16. So the operators jumped on that and did a few things to take advantage of it. But we continue to get more capital efficiency per dollar over the years. And I don't think that trend's going to change anytime soon because a lot of it because of technology and because of what some of the things you guys bring to the table. So I think also there was a shift towards different type of drilling rigs and maybe a little bit in a completion area and how we do our business. And the operators grabbed on that and said, well, we also now want to use natural gas as a fuel, which was a really good win-win for the environment. And it's a lower cost fuel than diesel through those years. And so you've seen these drilling rigs and completion fleets that have changed to burning more and more natural gas, which is a great win for the environment and also operationally for our costs that we incur. About the same time, 2014, the service sector was rolling out a tremendous amount of new technology and new products. And they continued to roll those out. They didn't keep them on the bank. 15 and 16, we saw a lot of advances in every area, completions, production facilities, our G&G world, our reservoir engineering, some of our tools. So, kudos for the service sectors And one of those key advances, as the operators discovered, we're going to crack the rock more frequently. So we might have been using 200 or 300 foot stages with clusters in there, and all of a sudden we went to 150 or 200 foot. And so in simple terms, we just created more cracks in the rock, and the productivity of the rock went up tremendously. That's all coinciding about that same time. And I think that, you know, in the simplest forms, there's a lot of, I guess, perforation clusters down there, and as we gather more and more information about that through fiber optic technologies, if you're familiar with that, we're learning more and more about the hydraulic fractures that we're creating. So we're doing a better job of putting more in the ground and then creating more of them at the same time. As we look at the drilling side, the better bit design, better mud motors, different mud systems, the rotary steerable technology to stay within a very small target window, which the geologists seem to think is really critical. I'm kind of had both hats. I'm the reservoir side, the completion side, and the G&G, where, sure, I think it's good to stay in the best rock, but I also think it's more critical to put the proppant up over that zone. And so that's been a big focus as well. On the completion side, as we go out longer, we have to change how we do things, and I'll talk about that a little bit in a minute, but we really have some new dissolvable plug technologies. If you guys are familiar with perf and plugs, and we're pumping down an isolation plug, and then we perforate the next zone. But those plugs, then you have to go and drill them out. And now the service sector is going towards dissolvable plugs. So with some temperature and movement across that plug, it should dissolve partially, totally, all of it. Diverters are also a new wave of the industry, as we're pumping more smaller particles to plug up perforation or to go out into the hydraulic fracture and create more branching fractures. So the diverter technology has been really big as well. So another new advance is, and this is rolling out right in front of us, is drilling longer laterals. Typically across the US, we're at 8,000 foot. The Bakken's always been 10 or 12, so kudos for them. And they had the least positions to be able to do that. But the rest of the industry has thought 8,000 foot is, you know, pretty achievable and risk, it's not risk-free, but it's less risk with that than going significantly longer. And in all the plays, we're pumping these wells out about 8. There's sure, you hear some big wells. Eclipse had a 19,000 foot well up here, probably the longest in the US. And so I think that as I look at these extended reach where you're going out over 10 or 12,000 feet, it's a big advance. You know, if you're doing your job at 8,000, all of a sudden I want to consistently get out to 12, 13, 14, 15,000. It's a lot of preparation. It's a lot of study for your individual formations. And so I'll bring up a case history in Appalachia. We're kind of setting records up here right now with what we're doing at range. And working with some of the service providers, we've changed out a lot of things in our drilling methods, gone to some more lubricating drilling fluids, as well as the rotary steerable, and drilling over 15,000 feet in a 10-foot target. And doing that at a clip of 3,500 feet per day, where before we were only 2,200 feet per day. I think our best one day was 5,500 feet. But beyond a certain length, you can really achieve a lot more wellbore very, very fast, if everything's going well up to a point. If you have a wellbore that's meandering and creating a lot of frictional points for the whole system, you can imagine it's harder to get it out as if I have a very, very smooth gun barrel well with less friction and the ability to quickly launch out there to 15,000. So I'm going to give our drilling folks a shout out that we've set some records for ourselves, over 10 wells now I think that are, I know they're over 13,000. I think our best one's 15,500, but we have game plan to consistently go longer and longer. And that took over a year of planning, letting the GIS groups and the land groups work together to make sure that we could capture that land and get those titles cleared. It's a big deal to go from 8 to 15,000, as every operator knows. So. That's been a big change, and I'm sure that's going to change across the United States, and more plays will be able to go longer, faster. The technology's there, it's just a matter of putting the lease positions together. So let me close by saying that the technology continues to improve. I don't think we've seen 25% of where the industry is going to go over the next 10 years. I'm just amazed at how good the information data collection has been and how we're able to put that into something to understand why the reservoir is doing what it is, and with that knowledge of why it's doing what it is, how do we better impact it cost effectively? And I think that the technology continues to grow, and I've only mentioned drilling completion, but in the facility side, capturing methane emissions is a big deal, right? The whole US and everybody's looking at capturing methane emissions, capturing all emissions. We have a lot of condensate production, which puts off some pretty heavy gases. And so the industry is really intent on minimizing any of those losses because we want to sell them. We can make money off of them, right? So that's a big growth, as well as the production side of our business for growing technologies. And finally, the GIS, the geology and geophysics groups, the reservoir engineering groups, that's kind of the melting pot for all the data. Before, during, after, long term. All that data that those groups make soup with, as I'll say, and try and make a good tasting soup and understand, how do I understand what's going on down home and how do I make wells better? I know that big data, I'm sure most everybody's familiar with IBM Watson. You know, I bet IBM has an ad on every day about Watson in the pharmaceutical, in the medical industry. And Watson's just a technology similar to what Google and Uber are trying to do with their driving cars, you know. Similar to what our jet fighter pilots use. You know, I've heard this analogy, a jet fighter pilot can maybe handle 5 things thrown at him, but the system gives you the ability to, the jet automatically can handle a lot more than 5. So there's a point where that jet's doing stuff that that driver just couldn't physically do. And that's the same thing with all of the machine learning system type of information gathering and commingling and making the best soup possible. And so we're using a lot of that at Range, trying to use it in a variety of different ways. I think that the first stage is understanding well production, how do I make my wells better? The next stage is rolling it out in the drilling equipment. How do I better automate everything that's going on in drilling? And the same with the completion side. A lot of data is being collected that humans really aren't taking in real time and doing a whole lot with except to get the job done. And I'm sure there's a whole lot more efficiency-wise that we could do if these machine learning systems were tagged onto that. And so, Mark and Harold, I don't know if you had any time for questions or if you need to just roll right into the next speaker, but I welcome everybody again and hope you have a great conference. And it's an honor to be able to open and welcome for everybody here. And thank you for the check for the food bank.